Councilmember Dippolito, Councilmember Price, time for a meeting. Don Rollator, I'm going to dock your time. You keep talking. I'd like to call our K-9 and Officer Fortunato to come forward and lead us in the pledge as we all stand and face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Officer Fortunato, come to the microphone and introduce your friend.
This is the newest addition to the K-9 unit with the Roswell Police Department. This is K-9 Leva. She's a 17-month-old female Belgian Malinois. We've been on the road just about 2 months now. May 2nd, we graduated K-9 school, the basic handler course, which is a 240-hour course. And she's certified as a full-service dog, which means she can do 4 drug orders: marijuana, heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine.
Can she do anything other than drugs?
Yes, sir. She can track.
No, can she do any commands like sit or shake?
She doesn't shake. She can do sit.
All right,
she can lay down.
Let's see the sit.
Come here. She was laying down there for a second.
Say something up like this. All right, let's have it here. We don't want you to be checking for drugs in here. We're trying to be politically correct.
You want to talk? She's going to talk to you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Handler Fortunato, could you tell what she's already done in the short period of time she's been with us?
Yes, ma'am. Just in the last couple of months as we've been on the road out of school, she's got a pound of marijuana, $3,000 in cash, and seized a vehicle on one stop. She made found several other huge amounts of drugs. She successfully tracked and led to the apprehension of 2 people that have fled from police. One was in Alpharetta. For them, their K-9 had gone home early, and they called us from mutual aid. We went up there and tracked the suspect up there, found him hiding in the woods. That track led to the arrest of 2 more who were involved in a theft ring, stealing parts from motor vehicles that were parked in parking lots. And then she tracked, a week ago, Sunday, a suspect that fled from Sergeant McDonald over here. She likes the work. She likes to see what everybody's doing.
Well, let's have a hand for Leva. Thank you, Leva. Question by Councilmember Price.
Yes, ma'am.
Can a dog sniff bombs?
She does not do bombs.
She wants to. Apparently she wants to.
And most dogs that are certified in drugs will not be certified in bombs simply because the drugs that she's certified in are 100% illegal for anybody to possess. So if she alerts on a car, from the legality standpoint, there's no reason we can't search that car. She can't tell me what she finds. All I know is that that's her positive alert to something she's trained to detect. If she was trained also in explosives and she were to smell that on a car, well, it's not illegal for people to have guns and things like that. And if she was to alert on a car for an explosive, I wouldn't know the difference whether it was drugs or explosives. So traditionally, drug dogs will always be drugs. Explosive dogs will always be explosives.
Don't want to get them mixed up.
Yes, sir.
So you're saying that she would just smell a regular gun or something?
If she was trained on explosives, because they'd start them off with black powder and other explosive things like that, she would alert to firearms. So in this case, she doesn't alert to any of those. We've done proving training before where she won't alert to any type of explosive. She's only strictly on drugs.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, ma'am.
One more hand for Leva. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is recognition of the City of Roswell being awarded the 2014 Stormwater Management Program of the Year, Phase 1 MS4 Community Award from the Georgia Association of Water Professionals. And this is a pretty big deal, and Mr. Mooring is here to tell us about it.
Thank you, Mr. DiPolito. Alice Champagne is our Water Resources Manager of the year, of the decade, of the century, and I'll ask her to come up and join me. But a couple of weeks ago, we were at an annual meeting of the Georgia Association of Water Professionals, and at the luncheon there, I was most pleasantly surprised to learn that hard to pick up. Most pleasantly surprised to learn that the City of Roswell had been awarded GAWP's award for the Stormwater Management Program of the Year. We have talked on many occasions about some of the great things that Alice and her team have done, and it's just nice to be noticed by your peers. I also just recently found out that Alice and her team have gotten all of the details together for a second stream in Roswell that has been not meeting current standards to be delisted. In other words, that we now meet the standards, and that is through improved monitoring, improved tracking, and through the programs that she has eliminated to improve our watersheds. So it's just a great tribute for Alice and her team, and another feather in the cap for the City of Roswell. So
What's that?
No, sir. I'm just proud to be part of Roswell and the stormwater management team, and we're proud to improve the watersheds. Thank you.
We're proud of everything that you've done.
Thank you.
So I heard last name is Champagne, nothing but the best.
Thank you.
Alice.
We have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Ward, second by Councilmember Wynn. All in favor? Anyone in the audience have any questions regarding the consent agenda? All in favor, raise your hands. Passed unanimously. This time I'll call upon the liaison. Councilmember Becky Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First one on our agenda tonight is PV 201401064. 205 West Crossville Road, the Providence Group. This item was deferred at the June 9th, 2014 Mayor and Council meeting. Mr. Townsend.
This item is requesting a second deferral. Staff would recommend the August 11th Mayor and Council City meeting for the variance information. This is the letter received on Friday from the applicant's attorney requesting the second deferral.
Is the, what is the applicant doing during this deferral time to make this thing ready for?
I'll let the applicant speak to
Well,
that.
from the applicant. Mr. Rollator, do you represent the applicant?
I'm going to let you go, Mr. Rollator. I was just going to say what you were going to do.
Don Rollator, 1865 Lockway Drive, Suite 601, Alpharetta, Georgia. It's a new address, and after 23 years, I'm having a hard time saying it. I'm here on behalf of the applicant and Providence Group. We have continued to meet with the Sterling Crossville Townhomes, who are our closest adjacent neighbor. After the second meeting with them, they had requested certain additional work from us, including the elimination of our variance request against their buffer. We have agreed to that. Staff has requested that we redraw the site plan and resubmit it to reflect that, and we continue to try and solicit input from our other neighbors, and we have not been successful to this point doing that. That is the reason for our request for deferral.
Do we have any members of the public here who come down for this issue? Please, go ahead and say that.
My name is Kelly Altine. I'm at 1200 Rome Drive, directly adjacent to this proposed development. We do oppose this development. First and foremost, we believe that the berm buffer requirements exist for a reason, and that the exceptions should not be made for a builder for this. And then we have numerous other objections, like they're going to remove clear-cut specimen trees. We believe they're violating density violations, not to mention increased traffic, noise, environmental impact, and we worry about storm water management. We already have a problem with erosion in our yards, so they're proposing to use the existing pond. So these are our objections at Orchard Lake.
The applicant has requested a deferral.
Right.
If the council grants that deferral, then we'll hear this full issue. But I wanted to give you an opportunity to be heard tonight.
Okay.
But I encourage you to come back because we'll hear the full presentation and make a decision on the date, August 11th. I understand when it's going to be proposed to defer to. Any questions you've got tonight?
No, we don't. We have met with the Providence Group, and we listened to them, and really they didn't persuade us any differently, so we don't feel any need to meet with them again.
Well, that's your call.
So that's why we haven't met with them again, and we did want you to know that we just want the existing berm requirements upheld.
Did I hear that, Mr. Rollator, which requirements were you going to meet, and which were, you mentioned, she says the existing berm requirements. I'm just to make sure we get clear communication here, which ones you have chosen not to ask for variance on.
We have asked we're going to waive the variance request against the Sterling Crossville townhomes, which was a very minor reduction as it was.
So I just want to make sure we've got a clear communication here. Do you understand what he's saying he's not requesting?
I do. We're Orchard Lake, and I'm directly
The opposite
Right.
side. So that's not being waived.
Right. That's not being waived.
Now you've made it clear to me, and I thank you. I just want to make sure everyone understood what was being proposed.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else wish to be heard on this tonight? Yes, sir, come forward, give us your name and address.
My name is Scott Carter. I'm the property manager for Sterling Crossville. And we're not opposed to the deferral. We do have a lot of concerns that we'll bring up at the next meeting, but we're not opposed to the deferral.
Thank you, sir. I see some other folks who may want to speak. If you'll give us your name and address.
Yeah, Denise Wood, 501 Roswell Green. We are to the east of the property in discussion, the opposite side also of Sterling Crossing. We are opposed to the variance for the buffer and the setbacks also, and have concerns about the stormwater system, pretty similar to what Orchard Lakes does. We have not had an opportunity to talk to the developer. They did call one of our board members just this afternoon and leave a message, but we have not had an opportunity, if they were trying to contact us.
Mr. Rollator, will you be available immediately after we make a decision on this deferral outside? And if you would get with Mr. Rollator. If any issues can be resolved before they come to council, we appreciate it. If no positions are changed, we encourage you to come back.
I understand.
Thank you, Ms. Wood.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Do you wish to speak? Thank you, sir. Does anyone else wish to speak on this question of deferral? Do we have a motion?
Not yet, sir. Okay, I was not going to make a motion for deferral until Ms. Wood stood up and found out they hadn't talked to Providence, so I will be asking for a deferral till August the 11th, to give the applicant an opportunity to speak to the concerned residents.
Motion for deferral by Councilmember Wynn. Is there a second? Second. Second by Councilmember Orleans. Any further discussion? Councilmember Price.
I was just curious, the Roswell Green Homeowner Association letter included some issues regarding traffic and transportation, and I know that our department has made a few comments, but they're not in the same vein as the concerns that the homeowners had. So I just wondered if in the interim they will address that, or is that something that the GDOT permit would address? And I'm sorry, I may need to repeat that. Did you see the homeowners Association letter, Roswell Green Homeowners Association letter, they had an issue with traffic hazards, and under the transportation comments, they're somewhat different, but the U-turns were one thing that were addressed, that were an issue. In other words, is there a possibility that GDOT would not even permit this to happen?
No. I mean, this is a fairly typical issue. Probably the issue that we would get into is the actual location of the access point onto Highway 92. With the lake that they have there, we don't have a lot of options. So the issue becomes sight distance, decel lanes, those sorts of things. We've worked through those with the applicant, though. And as far as the turnaround, the U-turn, all of the, with the 6-lane divided highway, all of the properties that abut that highway are going to have that same issue. So it's not an issue that, for instance, the design of this particular layout would, say, not be approved by GDOT. That's really not in the cards. That's really not an option.
So they wouldn't specify that maybe a decel lane had to have more capacity?
They would, and we do that for them. We know that will be an issue because of the speeds, and particularly in this particular location, being in a horizontal curve like it is, and there's actually a vertical curve too there, so it's a compound situation of going downhill and into a curve. So we definitely require a decel lane, and I don't believe the applicant has any problem with that.
Actually, I think I misspoke. I really meant in the U-turn lanes, would there need to be increased capacity there? It's going to require U-turns in both directions.
Yeah, we don't usually typically get involved in those sorts of things. We have extended turn lanes at signalized intersections when they back up through the through lane, but I am not aware of any queuing that occurs from any of those developments at any time of day that would require an increase in the turn lane capacity. But we'll also always be aware of that. I mean, adding another development like this in there could be that tipping point where we actually do need to...
So who does that analysis? Do we do that, or does GDOT do that?
We've never done it before. GDOT has done it before. I don't think I've ever asked them to extend a turn lane because of excess capacity, but we could work with them on that.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that their estimate of the numbers of cars, whether that is a potential problem or not.
It's a potential problem, I would say, on the scale of, say, 1 to 10, it's very low-end potential.
But we'll have a different set of facts to work with because presumably it'll be less, fewer. You're going to come back with a different proposal, correct?
The site plan, I mean, they're right. They're going to revise the site plan, and as obviously there'll be changes to the traffic study, whatever happens there, and we'll review their traffic study and we'll make recommendations, and we'll obviously work with GDOT to make sure that the mobility of the entire network is preserved.
Okay, thank you.
Does the council have any other questions? All in favor of the motion to defer, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Okay, the next one on the agenda is the final plat 201401625 Kingswood Subdivisions, 12160 Etris Road, EAHI Etris LLC. Mr. Townsend.
This is the acceptance of a final plat, Kingswood Subdivision on Edis Road. This was the property as the aerial prior to development. This shows the 26 single-family homes. There are 25 on the west side of Edis Road, and there is only one single-family lot on the east side of Edis Road. The rest is the detention and the steep slope and stream buffer. If you have any questions, staff would recommend approval of the final plat.
Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Townsend, on the northern edge of the property, there is a future connection roadway sign.
Yes.
Is the applicant dedicating the right-of-way all the way to the northern property line?
They are dedicating the right-of-way, but they're building the road out of the buffer. and the sign is put at the end of the asphalt. But the right-of-way is dedicated completely to the end of the property, correct?
Okay, and there'll be a sign there
Yeah.
indicating that that is a future connection, so
Yes.
any potential home purchasers know that that is a potential connection.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other, Councilmember Orleans? They were going to have, I think, 3 lots on the other side. What occurred? Is it strictly because of drainage, or what happened?
The size of the detention pond in their rezoning process was undersized. They actually had 2 locations on the west side of Idris for detention, so they actually increased it on the east side to accommodate all of the water going under the road, detaining before it would be released. So by doing that, they were able to remove one of the lots to the east side, but only could have one single-family lot. And that single-family lot has, there's no available sewer, so it needed to be at least an acre in size for septic tank if it was ever to develop.
Any other questions? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you. Mr. Townsend, refresh my memory on Kent Road. I know there was a lot of discussion about paving a portion of it or making improvements along Idris. It would seem at a minimum we need to make sure that the improvements to the gravel road are sufficient. And as do you recall what the existing, or what the condition was?
The existing road is gravel. It was the desire of the homeowners on the other end of Kent Road for it to remain all gravel, and that was the way it was conditioned and approved by council during the rezoning. It is a current gravel road and is to remain that way.
Okay, so it doesn't look like the applicant's making any changes to that apron?
No.
Accessing Idris, so it'll remain exactly as is?
As it is today.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion? Oh, Councilmember Price.
Yeah, I know we talked about this subdivision exhaustively a couple of years ago, and I'm trying to remember what, because we didn't talk about this at the legal meeting the other day, so and I didn't go back to see those other discussions, but at that time, we rezoned it, correct, to
R2.
to R2, and then in the UDC, it became
RS12, which is same as R2.
okay, so from the prior rezoning to the UDC, nothing has changed at all?
The only changes are those that were approved as part of the rezoning and conditioned as part of the discussions with the surrounding neighbors. And this final plat conforms with those conditions.
But we're using the property on the other side of the street to average it out, or is that irrelevant at this point?
Yeah, that doesn't make it, that's not inconsequential to the development. There was a total number of units allowed, and they're actually less than that number.
At this point?
Yes.
Like originally they requested, how many, do you recall?
I think the original approval had 47 or 48,
And now we have
26 total.
26. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, motion to approve the final plat for Kingswood subdivision.
Motion approved by Councilmember Wynn. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember DiPolito. All in favor of the... and did we ask anyone in the audience if they had any questions? All in favor of the motion? Unanimous.
Okay, the next one up is approval of a variance to sections 12.2.8 B and C and sections 12.2.9C of the Unified Development Code. Ms. Wakefield.
Okay. This is, as was mentioned, a request to vary Section 12.2.8B and C and Section 12.2.9C of the Unified Development Code to allow for a septic system for 2 lots so that the owner can build 2 single-family homes. This particular division plat was approved in 2008 by the city of Roswell. Was also approved. The septic was also approved by Fulton County at that same time frame. Similar to what happened on the Litchfield development that came before you about 2 months ago. It was discovered when the property owner came in to try and move this forward was that this setback kicked in. The applicant is asking to reduce the required 150-foot setback to 75 feet. At the time that the staff's write-up was part of the packet, we had not heard from Public Works. We have heard from Public Works at this time. Public Works has talked to the applicant, and Public Works can support the requested reduction from 150 feet to 75 feet for 1736 Cox Road as requested. That's the front lot. And for 1726 Cox Road, the back lot, Public Works, along with the rest of the city engineer and community development department, accept the variance to reduce it to 75 feet with the understanding that the applicant has agreed to switch the primary drain field and the secondary drain field. The applicant will submit the plans at the time of building permits for that particular lot, and that will be approved by Public Works. And staff would recommend approval with that understanding.
Does the council have any questions? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you. Ms. Wakefield, what is the rationale for that? Just curious.
Well, if you would go back to the next one. If you would look at the topo map that's shown on the screen, if you apply the 150-foot buffer setback, both of those lots will be virtually unbuildable.
Actually, let me clarify. The reason for switching the separate
I'm sorry.
fields,
Okay.
I didn't clarify my question. That's fine.
The reason for switching the two fields is that is staff opinion to get the primary field as far away from the stream as possible. It's highly unlikely, especially in this daytime, that homeowners go to the secondary field, so that was kind of the compromise with the applicant.
Okay, and the 75-foot is consistent with the state requirement?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilmember Price.
Just a kind of a procedural question, because their request in their letter on June 27th was, for variances from sections 21.1.8 and 21.1.9, which I guess is our old code.
Yes, ma'am.
So, and that's basically the same thing as the 12.2.8 and 9.
Yes, ma'am. It's the same, word for word.
Okay, so their request is in a form of a letter, or is their request, or how do we?
Their request is in a form for a letter, because this is not the usual variance request that would go before the BZA or a concurrent variance between mayor and council. So basically, they submit a letter with all their documentation. We put that information together, and we forward that information to all the various departments, which is similar to what we do with regular variance requests, and ask for input.
So then legally, how do we respond? I mean, what is the final legal result if we pass this?
If you pass this, what will happen is that we will send to the property owner a letter indicating the approval, indicating whatever conditions that were approved as part of that approval, and also a section of the summary of the minutes showing that it was approved by mayor and council. And that is then made part of the building permit record when the applicant comes in for the building permit.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Councilmember Eichelhardt.
If we approve this as written, it just makes the minimum 75 as opposed to, is there any way to allow staff, being the public works side, to maximize that if there are opportunities? Because if we just say it has to be, or it can be 75, then that's probably what's going to happen. But in some of the correspondence we've had, staff would prefer it to be further away if possible. So is there a way to make sure that that's an opening, if possible, as opposed to a minimum?
Yes, sir. If you would look at the site plan, you'll see that you have the primary field that's closest to the blue line, and you have the secondary field that's down toward the property line. What the applicant has agreed to is to switch those, so that is pushing the primary field as far away from the stream as possible. And as I mentioned before, that when the applicant comes in, or whoever comes in to build that lot, we will make sure that Public Works has a review of that, to make sure of that.
But do we have any mechanism at that time? Or can they just say, well, you gave us 75 feet, so that's all we have to do?
I mean, we will always try to push it back as far as possible. I'm not so sure as to how far away you can get it other than to switch the two fields, if you look at the site plan, but we can definitely do that.
And I guess what I'm saying, more for Councilwoman Nguyen, I guess at whatever point, whether or not we can give staff some flexibility to be able to push that if necessary, if possible, I should say.
And it's going to have a lot to do with the county and the perk test and that type of thing.
Mr. Mooring, can you help us?
Yes, sir. I think in this particular circumstance, it's in the applicant's best interest to keep the drain fields as far from the creek as possible. So we've had some discussion. I think he's oriented that way, and his designers have already taken all the steps that they could to keep the drain fields as far from the creek as they can. So I understand what you're saying, and I have the same question, but as a practical factor, at some future date when they might say, gosh, I really need to exercise this secondary drain field, they don't have to come back for a permit. There's unlikely to be a way for us to be involved in the process. So at that point, if anybody, it would be up to the health department. But the hope is that perhaps in 20 or 25 years, at some future point, there's need to go to a secondary drain field, that there's some new technology that would allow them to orient it a little bit differently and stay further away. And I think Mr. Howard has expressed interest in doing just that.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
Yes, sir. Motion to approve the variance with the caveat of 1736 Cox Road would be 75 feet. 1726 Cox Road would be 75 feet. The applicant will switch the primary and secondary drain fields and will submit a revised site plan or revised plans to the staff to reflect that the switching of the two drain fields.
Motion by Councilmember Nguyen to approve the variance. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Diamond. Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion? Councilmember Eichelhardt.
Just one comment that clearly just started the UDC and we're already given a variance, but I think this is a very specific reason for this one location because there's a lot of factors in that. So just make part of the record that we're doing that for specific reasons, and it doesn't mean anybody else comes along and say, well, we want that too. This has a number of factors that go into this that make sense.
Yes, sir.
Any additional comments before we entertain a vote? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. Councilmember DiPolito, did you vote? Thank you. That is unanimous. It was slow on the right. The right's a little slow getting those up.
I'm blocking it, sorry. The last one on my list is approval of a license for land use for 14 Elizabeth Way. Mrs. Wakefield.
Yes, the owner of the Real Fix Pizzeria to be located, it's under construction now, at 14 Elizabeth Way, is requesting a license for land use to allow for outdoor dining in the rear of the building. This particular property backs up to the east alley. There is no sidewalk. There's no real provision for a sidewalk cafe, thus the reasons for the license for land use. Staff's recommendation is, and if you remember, this is probably the reason that staff came to mayor and council and asked to do the east-west alley master plan, because there was an interest in developing or allowing for outdoor seating in the alleyway. Staff's recommendation for the license for land use is approval. For approval based on the site plan that was received by the City of Roswell on May the 23rd. Approval provided that the applicant agrees to Section 9.7.15 of the UDC, which lays out the standards for a sidewalk cafe. Also, that the applicant understand that changes based on the east-west alley master plan may be implemented to this space without any additional cost to the City of Roswell. That the barriers and all furniture must match all specifications included on the pre-application list, which is in the sidewalk cafe application. And also that there must be 2 chains between each set of columns in order to meet the ADA accessibility requirement. As you can see from the maps, from the photos that are on the screen, that the applicant has moved forward to make the improvements not only to 14 Elizabeth Way, but also to 16 Elizabeth Way.
Hello, my name is Hamid Azari, and I'm at 14 Elizabeth Way. I'm actually representing Hisham Azari and Fikret Kovac at the moment. I honestly just here to hear what you guys have to say and transfer it to them and let them know what's going on. You're very welcome.
Thank you,
Some comments or motion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to hold off on the comments I was going to make. But just a clarification, the improvements that have been done to 14 Elizabeth Way extended to 16 Elizabeth Way, which is not part of the application, am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and the improvements that were done on 14 and 16 Elizabeth Way were not permitted by the city.
That's correct.
So we don't know if meets in its engineering plans or regulations, stormwater grading, ADA, or construction. Am I correct?
That is correct.
For the record. And I'm just getting a for the record, the area in which this work was done, who is the owner of that property?
I'm sorry, the City of Roswell.
And it's my understanding the City of Roswell did not give permission from the property owner to make any of these improvements.
That's correct.
Yes, sir. It was supposed to come tonight for us to listen to the presentation and decide if the land use application approval was warranted. So I can wait until my colleagues make comments, or I can make a motion now, whatever the mayor prefers.
I think it's appropriate to make a motion if you're so...
Yes, sir, I do. And like I said, I'm not making the comments I had written down. My motion is to defer the land use permit for 14 Elizabeth Way until the east/west alley master plan is approved by mayor and council, and that the application, once we get this approval of the master plan, is vetted through the city's permitting process as required. That is my motion, sir.
Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Orlins. Anyone in the audience have any comments on this? Any further discussion by council? Councilmember DePolito.
Technical question, which would come first, the land use approval or the permits requesting the work be completed?
It would be HPC approval, but given that this is kind of unique, that it's not the typical sidewalk cafe, we had talked about letting the land use approval go forward so that then we will know that it was approved, because we didn't want the applicant to spend a lot of money engineering or designing something when there wasn't going to be approval. At that time, we would send it to HPC for their approval. Staff would also review it to see if any additional permits were triggered. You know, like we would look at the stormwater, we would look at the slope of the patio, we would look at the slope for the accessibility.
So assuming this deferral passes, the applicant would then come back at the appropriate time with a request for land use approval, and then they would go through the permitting and HPC approval process.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Diamond.
I don't know how to start my question, I guess. So your motion is to not consider it at all until after the approval of the master plan? Given the track record, yes. I understand that, and I understand, you know, that it is putting, you know, pushing it aside, but I just think that if we're spending this amount of money on an east-west alley master plan, that we want to make sure that everybody knows exactly what needs to be done, and nothing has to be torn up. It might have to be torn up anyway, but everybody knows what's going on, and to do it that way. And that's how come I'm making the motion to wait until we approve the master plan. Given that we're now looking at approval and then HPC, which is 2 or 3 months, would you consider doing approval contingent on approval of this and let it go concurrently? Well, I don't see why it could go through the HPC if the master plan has not been approved. That's one of the things that would happen. I mean, if HPC doesn't know what they're approving, you know, seeing the master plan, you know, if that's the case, then they don't know what they're going to be looking at, and if the plan that's being submitted is part of the master plan, overall master plan that the mayor and council approves. So my motion stands, Mr. Mayor?
We have a motion to defer. Is there a second? There was a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. That is 5 in favor, all opposed.
Clarification.
All right, we'll clarification if you'll ask your question.
Okay, now I see that the staff has recommended approval for the license for land use. Again, I know Councilman DiPolito just clarified the steps in this. I guess one question I have is, the area that's already been improved, does that extend beyond the area that in our concepts we were looking at earlier tonight, that none of those road possibilities could still occur?
No,
We don't know.
we don't know, because the master plan has not been finalized or accepted by mayor and council. I can tell you that this property is part of the study area.
Right, but the red line where the arrow tip is at the top, does that extend beyond the property line, or did we ever identify the property line?
It does not extend beyond the property line. That is the city's property.
So it does extend beyond their property line?
No, it doesn't extend into their property line. It's ours.
The determining factor will be is whether Canton Street is a one-way or two-way, and what is that road right-of-way width. There's been a discussion as to there will be some pedestrian area in the back of these locations, but we do not know the specific width until the roadway width, curbs, locations of sidewalks are all determined. We don't know whether his improvement encroaches into what would be
It hasn't been engineered.
Correct.
We don't know what the turn radius is.
Right.
Okay, now realistically, none of that's going to happen this summer, is that correct?
The improvements to the alleyway?
Right.
No, it's not going to happen this summer, but what we would have the opportunity with the master plan is as development occurs, then that development will consult that master plan in terms of making their improvements. And again, in this case, it's in the city right-of-way, so it would have to have approval from this body.
Right, I'm not sure the total wording of the motion thus far, but...
Let me repeat the motion as I understand it, so we'll have a clear understanding. The motion is to defer until after we have a decision on the master plan.
So that would defer...
That's the gist of it?
Yes, sir, that's the gist of it. I kind of added a little bit more embellished, but that's the gist of it. Yes, sir. May I add one other thing, Mr. Mayor? This does not deter the pizza place from opening. They can still operate within the existing four walls of the building. So we are not...
They would not be able to use this patio.
They just cannot use the patio, but the business itself can still get a CO and can still operate out of the existing four walls of 14 Elizabeth Way. They just cannot use the back alley.
They cannot use property which they do not own. Correct.
Exactly, sir. So we're not hindering them from opening up their business.
They use their property, but not the city's property.
Yes, sir.
Or are you saying that entire red circle is city property, or just the eastern portion?
The red portion is city property.
The entire red portion?
Yes.
The shaded area is the whole alley. The red portion is the work that they did within the city's property. They worked behind number 16 also.
Right. No, but, okay, the green square, is the green square private property?
No.
Oh, the city. Well, that's what I asked earlier, and you said yes.
We probably misunderstood your question.
Okay, so this is not private property at all?
No.
Oh, okay.
How do you vote? That was unanimous. All right. If there was a message to take back from this, from folks who own property on the Canton Street alley or adjacent to it, it is not that the city is opposed to improving this alley. We, in fact, support improvement of this alley, and we're glad to see an interest in that. The message is, don't move forward on someone else's property until you have permission. That's the simple message. Not that we're opposed to what's being done, but in the order needs to wait until the city grants permission. And in this case, the city is looking at other changes, and I don't think that there is a long-term I'm sure there's no opposition long-term to improving this, but we're simply saying, wait until you get approval and wait until we complete our plans. And we are diligently moving forward with that. We had a work session to that. And what's the schedule on these work sessions on this East Alley?
We're looking at having a work session in August and bringing it to mayor and council for consideration September the 10th.
So there's a potential for approval of this on September 10th?
Yes, sir.
And so when the weather's beautiful, perhaps we'll be able to move forward on this.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Well, just another little quick question, please.
Yes.
Thank you. When staff recommended approval for this, was that considering that this was a temporary situation, or that, speaking on behalf of the city, that this approval would potentially be granted, or what was the rationale to approve this on city land?
Our recommendation to approve this was based on staff's intent not to try to deter or to hold up a business owner. However, staff indeed put in this condition that the business owner would have to make may have to make some changes at no cost to the city, depending on the final outcome of the master plan.
So if there are tables placed out here this summer, will there be a citation?
There will be a citation.
We have taken a vote on this matter. If there's any additional comments from council, we'll entertain those, but this decision has been made. We have a report from our city attorney.
Recommendation for closure to discuss personnel litigation and real estate.
Do we have a motion for closure? Motion by Councilman Ippolito and second, I think, by Councilmember Eaglehart. All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. Let's adjourn to closure. Councilman Hollins wants to go home.